The music, the costumes, the hair. There's only one ABBA. And after decades of going their own way, the Swedish supergroup is back.
Music history would never be complete without mentioning the incredible ABBA. At the heart of it all is Benny Andersson, helping to create songs that topped charts and bagged awards back in the day. Yet, behind the glitter and the chart-topping hits, Benny had a troubled life. Through it all, Benny chose to keep much of that pain private, letting the music speak for him. Now, at 78, he's finally sharing the truth about his past.
Benny Andersson discusses ABBA's future plans in 2024. Fans await news about new music and live performances. Benny shares his thoughts on what lies ahead for ABBA's legacy.
About her most especially, and also about what really happened with ABBA. Join us in this video as we discover the truths Benny Andersson reveals about her. The end for ABBA and the beginning of Benny Andersson's troubles. In the spring of 1982, after rising to the limelight, ABBA returned to the studio to start fresh sessions. There were whispers of a new album, maybe even a small tour, but progress was slow. By May and June, they had only managed to record 3 songs: You Owe Me One, I Am the City, and Just Like That. Benny and Bjorn, however, weren't satisfied with the results, and the tracks were shelved while the group took a summer break. By August, plans had shifted. Instead of a new studio album, they prepared a compilation, The Singles, the first 10 years, as a Christmas release. It would feature all their past hits, plus a few new songs. In October and December, they put out 2 final singles: The Day Before You Came with Cassandra as the B-side, and Under Attack with You Owe Me One as the B-side. The Day Before You Came found success in several European countries, landing in the top 5, but in the UK, neither single managed to break into the top 20. The compilation album, The Singles, the first 10 years, became another big success, topping the charts in the UK and Belgium, and performing strongly in Germany and the Netherlands. But Under Attack would go down as ABBA's final single before their breakup. Of the songs left on the shelf, I Am the City eventually surfaced in 1993, while Just Like That was never officially released in full, despite years of fan demand. Bits of it were later reworked for other projects, like the musical Chess. To this day, Benny and Bjorn have refused to release the complete ABBA version, even though it has circulated on bootlegs for decades. In late 1982, ABBA made their final promotional appearances. That November, they traveled to London for shows like Saturday Superstore and The Late Late Breakfast Show. The following week, they appeared in West Germany on Show Express. Then, on November 19th, they gave their last Swedish TV appearance on Neues Maskinen. Finally, on December 11th, 1982, ABBA performed together for the very last time. The appearance, broadcast via live link from a Stockholm TV studio, aired on The Late Late Breakfast Show with Noel Edmonds in the UK. It quietly marked the end of an era, the close of one of the most successful pop groups in history. But to truly understand ABBA, you have to look beyond the music. What really happened to ABBA and Benny Andersson? Keep watching to find out. Understanding what went wrong. ABBA wasn't just about glittering costumes and infectious melodies. It was built on 2 real love stories: Agnetha Fältskog with Björn Ulvaeus and Benny Andersson with Annie Frida Lyngstad. In the early 1970s, part of ABBA's magic came from the idea that the couple singing heartfelt love songs on stage were also sharing those emotions in real life. Agnetha first met Björn in 1968, back when he was still performing with the Hootenanny Singers. Agnetha and Björn married in July 1971, with Benny playing the organ at their wedding. They welcomed their daughter Linda in 1973 and their son Peter in 1977. But as ABBA's fame skyrocketed, the endless touring and constant pressure began to strain their marriage. In 1979, right at the peak of ABBA's global success, they divorced. The split was especially hard on Agnetha, who later admitted she needed therapy to cope. Reports at the time suggested that Bjorn had moved on quickly with a new girlfriend, Lena Kellersjö. Around this period, Bjorn wrote The Winner Takes It All, which Agnetha sang with heartbreaking lines like, "Tell me, does she kiss like I used to kiss you?" She described the song as deeply emotional but also cathartic, saying, "It was fantastic to do that song because I could put in such feeling." Although the couple told the press it was a happy divorce, Agnetha later reflected with honesty, "Obviously, we all know there are no such things as happy divorces, especially when there are children involved." Benny and Frida's love story began in 1969, and by 1971, they were already living together. Unlike Bjorn and Agnetha, they didn't marry right away. It wasn't until October 1978, when ABBA was at its very peak, that they tied the knot. But their marriage was short-lived. By 1980, they too had separated. Benny publicly claimed they remained friends, but the real reason soon came out. He had fallen in love with TV producer Mona Nurklit, whom he later married in 1981. Frida spoke openly about their decision to part ways, saying, "We simply grew out of each other. Breaking up became a necessity. Like Agnetha and Bjorn, they tried to carry on with a BBA after their split, but the chemistry wasn't the same." By 1982, both marriages had ended, and so had ABBA's golden era. How did Benny Andersson's life become so complex? Who was Benny before the spotlight and fame? Let's see. ABBA's Benny Andersson before the stage and spotlight. Benny Andersson was born on December 16, 1946, in Stockholm's Vasa district. His father, Gösta, worked as a civil engineer, and his mother, Lila, cared for the family. Benny also had a younger sister, Eva-Lise, born in 1948. Music was in his blood. Both his father and grandfather played the accordion, and when Benny turned 6, they bought him one of his own and introduced him to Swedish folk tunes, traditional melodies, and a catchy style called schlager. He quickly fell in love with music of all kinds. The first records he ever owned were Du bist Musik by Katarina Valente and Elvis Presley's Jailhouse Rock. He especially adored the track Treat Me Nice. This was greatly because of the blend of piano used in the song. That mix of styles would shape him for the rest of his life. By the age of 10, Benny had his very own piano and taught himself how to play. Inspired by musicians like Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones, Benny was going to become one of the greatest musicians ever. Soon. School never really held his attention, so at 15, he walked away from it and threw himself into music, performing at youth clubs. Around that time, he met his first girlfriend, Christina Gronvall. Together, they had 2 children, Peter in 1963 and Helen in 1965. In early 1964, Benny and Christina joined a quirky little group called Elverkets Spelmanslag, which translates to the Electricity Board Folk Music Group. The name was a playful nod to their electric instruments. They mostly played instrumental numbers, like Baby Elephant Walk. But this was also when Benny started experimenting with writing his very first songs. In October 1964, Benny's career took a huge leap forward when he became the keyboardist for the pop band The Hep Stars. Just a few months later, in March 1965, they scored their big breakthrough with the hit song Cadillac. Practically overnight, the Hep Stars became one of Sweden's hottest pop groups of the 1960s. Benny wasn't just the guy on the keyboard, he quickly became the band's main creative force, and even a teen idol in his own right. At first, they mostly played covers of international hits, but Benny's songwriting soon gave them their own identity. He penned several of their most beloved songs including No Response, Sunny Girl, Wedding, Consolation, It's Nice to Be Back, and She Will Love You. These songs cemented both the band's reputation and Benny's talent for crafting unforgettable music. Then came a meeting that would change his life. In June 1966, Benny crossed paths with Bjorn Ulvaeus. The two instantly clicked and began writing together. Their first collaboration, Isn't It Easy to Say, was later recorded by the Hepstars. Benny also worked with Lasse Berghagen, and one of their co-written songs, Hey Clown, took second place at the 1969 Melodifestivalen, Sweden's biggest music competition. How did this duo rise to become global sensations? Where else was life going to take them? Becoming ABBA, Benny Andersson, rise to stardom. Sweden's Eurovision Song Contest finals in 1969 turned out to be a life-changing moment for Benny, and not just musically. It was there that he met singer Annie Frid Lyngstad, who would soon become both his partner and collaborator. Around the same time, Bjorn Ulvaeus fell in love with another rising star, Agnetha Fältskog. These relationships naturally pulled the four of them closer, both personally and musically, laying the groundwork for what was to come. That same year, Benny and Bjorn began to see their songwriting efforts pay off. They scored their first hits with Ljuva Sextiotal for Brita Borg and Spieleman for the Hepstars. As the two couples continued working together on recording sessions, something magical started to happen. The blend of Agnetha's and Annie Frid's voices. Their harmonies were so powerful that Benny and Bjorn decided to shape their sound around them, inspired by popular mixed vocal groups of the era. Benny's bond with Annie Frid deepened through music as well. He produced her 1969 single Peter Pan, and later her debut solo album Frida in 1971. She stayed busy performing in Stockholm's cabaret and revue scene, while Agnetha starred in the Swedish production of Jesus Christ Superstar in 1972. By the early 1970s, all four were not only supporting each other's careers, but also building the chemistry that would fuel ABBA's rise. Their very first performance together happened in April 1970 during a trip to Cyprus. What began as casual singing on the beach quickly turned into an impromptu concert for United Nations soldiers stationed there. Later that year, Benny and Bjorn released their first joint album, Leica Happiness, with Agnetha and Annie Frid providing backing vocals on several tracks. In November 1970, the foursome launched a stage act called Festfolk, a Swedish word that can mean both party people and engaged couples. Their debut show in Gothenburg wasn't exactly a critical success, with reviewers panning most of the performance. But there was one bright spot: their rendition of Hey Gamle Man, Hello Old Man, which became their very first hit together. Where next did the musical wind blow this rising talents? How would they find their true passions? Keep watching to find out. Finding their North Star, the bond that formed ABBA. The foursome's first real breakthrough came with Hey Gamle Man, Hello Old Man, credited to Bjorn and Benny. The song climbed to number 5 on the sales charts and held the number 1 spot on Svensktoppen, Sweden's radio hit list, for an incredible 15 weeks. By 1971, the four were collaborating more frequently, adding vocals to one another's songs and even touring together. Benny and Bjorn released singles like Tänk om jorden vore ung, Imagine if Earth Were Young, and Det kan ingen doktor hjälpa, No Doctor Can Help with That, with Agnetha and Annie Frid's voices playing a bigger role each time. That summer, Agnetha and Bjorn, now married, began performing regularly with Benny in Sweden's folk parks. Stig Andersson, head of Polar Music, saw something the world had yet to notice. He believed Benny and Bjorn had the potential to reach far beyond Sweden. He pushed them to keep writing and experimenting. In 1972, they entered Melodifestivalen Sweden's Eurovision Selection Contest with Zeg det med en sång, Say It with a Song. It placed third, but became a hit at home. That same year, an unexpected surprise came from Japan. Their track She's My Kind of Girl cracked the top 10 there, showing that their music could cross borders. But the real spark ignited in June 1972 when they released People Need Love. This time, Agnetha and Annie Frid weren't just backing voices, they were front and center. The record was credited to Bjorn and Benny, Agnetha and Annie Frid, a mouthful of a name, but the sound clicked. The song only reached number 17 in Sweden, but it was enough to prove they had something special. It even made a small dent in the US charts, hinting at what was to come. What was to come? When did the four finally decide it was time to become a team? Keep watching to find out. How Benny Andersson's ABBA was born. In 1973, the group, still officially Bjorn and Benny, Agnetha and Annie Frid, returned to Melodifestivalen with a new track, Ring Ring. Under the guidance of producer Michael B. Trito, the song was given a rich wall of sound production that would later become ABBA's hallmark. The song Ring Ring was also given English lyrics by Neil Sedaka and Phil Cody. Many expected it to win Sweden's Eurovision selection, but to everyone's surprise, it only came in third. Still, it didn't matter much in the long run. Both the single and the Ring Ring album became big hits across Europe and even in South Africa. That same year, Agnetha gave birth to her daughter, Linda. For one trip to West Germany, she was temporarily replaced by singer Inger Brunt, but soon returned to the group. Meanwhile, their manager, Stig Andersson, realized they needed a shorter, catchier name. He began calling them ABBA, borrowing the initials of their first names: Agnetha, Bjorn, Benny, and Annie Frid.
The music, the costumes, the hair. There's only one ABBA. And after decades of going their own way, the Swedish supergroup is back. And talking with our Seth Doan, for the record.
It was also a cheeky nod to a Swedish fish canning company of the same name. The company permitted to use it, as long as the band didn't bring shame to the brand. By late 1973, ABBA was appearing on studio paperwork. A few years later, their now iconic logo was born almost by accident. During a photo shoot, Benny held up his letter backwards, sparking the idea of the mirrored B. By 1976, the bold, symmetrical logo had become a permanent part of ABBA's image. In 1974, ABBA returned to Melodifestivalen with a new song, Waterloo, a playful, glam rock-inspired track. This time, the group was polished, confident, and ready. On February 9, 1974, they won the Swedish selection, earning the right to represent their country at the Eurovision Song Contest. On April 6, 1974, performing in English on the grand stage in Brighton, England, ABBA stunned the audience with their flamboyant costumes, energy, and unforgettable sound. They won the crown, Sweden's first ever Eurovision victory. The triumph opened doors across Europe. Waterloo soared to number 1 in 9 countries and even broke into the US top 10, peaking at number 6. Their follow-up single, Honey, Honey, saw modest success, though in the UK the label decided to re-release Ring Ring instead. By the end of the year, some critics were already whispering, did ABBA end as a one-hit wonder? What really happened after their first hit? Keep watching to find out. The comeback that shook the world, ABBA's rise to global acceptance. In late 1974, ABBA set out on a European tour, but not every show was a success. Some concerts didn't sell out, and a few were even cancelled. Still, the tide turned in early 1975 when they toured Scandinavia, where audiences packed out every venue. That same year, they released two singles that would change everything, SOS and Mamma Mia. Both songs were massive hits across Europe, but it was in Australia that ABBA truly exploded. Thanks to constant airplay on the hit TV program Countdown, Mamma Mia dominated the charts, holding the #1 spot for an incredible 10 weeks. By the start of 1976, ABBA had become a household name in much of the world, though breaking into the US album market still proved tricky.
We had two songs. We enjoyed those. We thought they were really good, so we said, maybe we should do a couple of more. And we did. And then we said, maybe we should do a few more. So we have an album.
Their fortunes shifted again in March 1976 with the release of Greatest Hits. The collection became their first UK #1 album and included a brand new track, Fernando. The song was a phenomenon, topping the charts in at least 13 countries and selling more than 10 million copies worldwide, making it one of ABBA's all-time biggest hits. Later that year, they dropped Arrival, the album that took their success to new heights. It featured Money, 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 Knowing Me, Knowing You, and their most iconic track, Dancing Queen. The latter topped the charts worldwide, and crucially, it hit #1 in the United States, cementing ABBA's place on the global stage. In January 1977, ABBA launched their first major international tour. It began in Norway, moved through Europe, and finally landed in Australia. The Australian leg was wild. Fans turned out in massive numbers despite heavy rain, and in Perth, a bomb scare briefly disrupted the show. The scale of the tour was so intense that it was immortalized in ABBA, the movie. By the end of 1977, they released ABBA, the album, a record that accompanied the film. 2 years later, in April 1979, they returned with Voulez-Vous. Uniquely, much of it was recorded at Miami's famous Criteria Studios, giving the songs a slick disco polish. The album featured hits like Chiquitita, I Have a Dream, and Does Your Mother Know? While not every single topped the UK charts, the songs dominated elsewhere, reaching #1 in Belgium and climbing charts across the globe. Later in 1979, ABBA released Greatest Hits Volume 2, which included another global smash, Gimme, 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 A Man After Midnight. That September, they kicked off ABBA, the tour, starting in North America, where they played to sold-out arenas, a breakthrough in a market that had been tough to crack. The tour then swept through Europe, including an incredible 6 consecutive nights at London's Wembley Arena. In 1980, the group headed to Japan for 11 sold-out concerts, their last major tour as a band. That summer, they released The Winner Takes It All, a song so emotionally raw that many believed it was inspired by Bjorn and Agnetha's divorce. Both denied it was personal, but fans connected deeply with its themes of heartbreak and loss. In November of that year, ABBA released Super Trooper. The album broke UK records with over 1 million pre-orders before it even hit stores. Its title track became their final UK #1 single. Around the same time, they recorded Gracias por la Música, a Spanish-language album that turned them into superstars across Latin America, opening ABBA's music to an entirely new audience. By now, their songs were echoing across every corner of the globe. What did stardom open the team to? Was stardom really a blessing or a curse? Keep watching to find out. The beginning of the end. In January 1981, life behind the scenes was shifting. Bjorn married Lena Kellersjö, and ABBA's longtime manager Stig Andersson celebrated his 50th birthday. For the occasion, the band recorded a special tribute song, Hovas Vittne. Only 200 red vinyl copies were pressed and given to guests, making it one of the rarest ABBA records in existence. Just a month later, another blow came. Benny and Annie Frid announced their divorce. Their marriage had been strained for years, and Benny had already met Mona Nørklit, whom he would marry that November. Despite the personal turmoil, Benny and Bjorn kept writing, and by March 1981, the group was back in the studio. In April, they filmed Dick Cavett Meets ABBA, a television special that combined interviews with live performances. Later that year, they released what would become their final studio album, The Visitors. ABBA's next album, The Visitors, marked a shift in tone. It was a more mature record, tackling themes like broken relationships, political oppression, aging, and the loss of innocence. The haunting title track even hinted at secret meetings against totalitarian regimes. The standout single, One of Us, became their last #1 in Germany and their final top 3 hit in the UK. While the album topped charts across much of Europe, it didn't quite reach the same success in places like France, Australia, and Japan. In North America, When All Is Said and Done was released instead, earning ABBA one last top 40 hit in the US. The song, though about separation, carried a more hopeful message. By this time, with Benny and Frida's divorce public, rumors of tension within the band grew stronger. What was life like after ABBA for ABBA's team members? Life after ABBA. After ABBA, Bjorn and Benny remained creative powerhouses.
I wasn't allowed on stage. They said, this is not for the artists, this is for the writers. I am a writer. No, you don't look like a writer at all.
They co-wrote the hit musical Chess, later helped bring Mamma Mia to life on both stage and screen, and produced music for other artists. Their fame and fortunes only grew, each amassing hundreds of millions over the years. For Frida and Agnetha, life after ABBA looked very different. Both women stepped away from the spotlight and faced personal struggles. Agnetha, in particular, wrestled with stage fright, a fear of flying, and the guilt of being away from her children during long tours. Her shy nature and less confident English compared to the others often left her feeling out of place. After her divorce from Bjorn, she entered several relationships, one with a psychiatrist who had once tried to save her marriage, another with a detective assigned to protect her children after kidnapping threats. In 1990, she quietly married surgeon Thomas Sonnenfeld, but the union ended in divorce just 3 years later. Tragedy soon followed. Her mother died by self-harm, and within a year, her father also passed away. The double loss left Agnetha devastated, and she withdrew further from public life, avoiding music altogether. In one of the most unusual chapters of her life, Agnetha began a relationship with Gert van der Graaf, a Dutch fan who had stalked her for years. She later admitted, "I felt I could not resist anymore. I wanted to know him." The relationship ended badly, and after their split, he returned to stalking her, forcing her to seek legal protection. Eventually, Agnetha retreated deep into the Swedish countryside, living almost like a recluse, drawing comparisons to Greta Garbo. She even declared at one point, "I want to be alone." For years, she avoided music entirely. Then, in 2004, she surprised fans with the release of her album, My Coloring Book. But just as quickly as she had re-emerged, she slipped back into seclusion. Frida's life carried its own share of shadows. She was born in 1945 from a wartime romance between her Norwegian mother, Sinni, and a married German sergeant named Alfred. Sinni was only 16 at the time, and with food scarce, Alfred once brought her a sack of potatoes, a small act that led to a brief relationship. Before Frida was even born, Alfred had been sent back to Germany and never met his daughter. In post-war Norway, relationships with German soldiers brought shame. So Sinni fled with baby Frida and her own mother, Arntine, to Sweden. Tragedy struck early. Sini died of kidney failure at just 21, leaving Frida to be raised by her grandmother. For much of her life, Frida believed her father had drowned. It wasn't until 1977, after she was already famous, that his family recognized her from an interview. A reunion was arranged, but it was bittersweet. Frida later said, "It's difficult to get a father when you're 32 years old." By the time she met Benny in 1969, Frida had already lived through a marriage and divorce and was raising 2 children from her first husband. She and Benny married in 1978, but their relationship ended in 1981. The breakup was painful, especially as Benny soon remarried. After ABBA, Frida built a new life abroad, first in London, then in Switzerland. In 1992, she married into German royalty, becoming Her Serene Highness, Princess Anni-Frid of Reuss. But joy was again followed by heartbreak. In 1998, her 30-year-old daughter, Lisa Lotta, was killed in a car accident in New York. Just a year later, her husband, Prince Heinrich, died of cancer. Those losses devastated her, and she withdrew from public life, saying her faith gave her the strength to carry on. In more recent years, she has found peace and happiness once again, living quietly in Zermatt, Switzerland, with Viscount Henry Smith, heir to the W.H. Smith fortune. How has Benny remained relevant in music and the world generally? How much esteem did he enjoy for his musical brilliance back in the days? Keep watching to find out. Celebrating the mastery of Benny Andersson. Benny Andersson's career after ABBA has been just as decorated as his time in the band.
Mamma Mia is a musical celebrating its 15th birthday in London this year, a show that has gone on to be staged in theatres around the world and is also still playing in New York. As we all know, it celebrates the music of ABBA.
Alongside Björn Ulvaeus, he earned major recognition in theatre, nominated for a Drama Desk Award for Chess and a Tony Award for Mamma Mia's orchestrations. The original cast albums for both shows were even nominated for Grammys, and the pair later won a Touring Broadway Award for Mamma Mia's score. On his own, Andersson picked up 4 Swedish Grammy Awards, plus, with Ulvaeus, received the Ivor Novello Special International Award, the Swedish Music Export Prize twice, and the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Swedish Music Publishers Association. In 2002, the Swedish government honored him with an honorary professorship for creating world-class music that reached audiences everywhere. Recognition continued to follow him. In 2007, Andersson was elected to the Royal Swedish Academy of Music, and in 2008, Stockholm University awarded him an honorary doctorate in humanities for his work in preserving and advancing Swedish folk traditions. One of his most memorable public moments came in 2010, when he and his former wife, Anni-Frid Lyngstad, reunited on stage in New York to accept ABBA's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. Reflecting on ABBA's unique sound, Andersson explained how Sweden's long, dark winters and the depth of European folk music shaped their songs. If you live in a country like Sweden, with 5 or 6 months of snow and the sun gone for 2 months, it shows up in the art. You hear it in Swedish folk songs, in Russian melodies, in Sibelius and Grieg, in Greta Garbo's eyes, in Jussi Björling's voice, and yes, in the sound of Frida and Agnetha in some of our songs, too. More honors followed. In 2012, he was given another honorary doctorate, this time in philosophy from Luleå University of Technology, and that same year he won Sweden's prestigious Guldbaggen Award for composing the score to the film Palme. His 2017 solo album Piano later earned him the Opus Classic Award in 2018. And in March 2024, Just ahead of the 50th anniversary of ABBA's Eurovision win, Andersson and his 3 bandmates were each appointed Commander, First Class, of the Royal Order of Vasa by King Carl XVI, Gustaf of Sweden. It was a historic moment, as the Swedish Royal Orders of Knighthood hadn't been awarded to citizens for nearly 50 years. Benny Andersson struggled with alcoholism for much of his adult life. In 2001, he gave up drinking completely and has remained sober ever since. It wasn't until a 2011 interview, almost 10 years into his sobriety, that he openly spoke about the extent of his struggles with alcohol and his woes. So, what do you think of all Benny had to say? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video shown on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories. See you there.